Imagine this. You've dimmed the lights, tucked yourself into a cozy corner, and the world outside begins to fade away. Tonight, we step into shadows that history has tried to forget. Not the grand empires, nor the shining heroes, but the whispers of fear. Strange tales, forgotten corners, chilling superstitions, and unsettling moments that shaped the way humans saw their world. Welcome, dear traveler, to History for Sleepyheads. My name is your quiet guide for the evening, and for the next 2 hours, we'll drift together through forgotten streets, haunted corridors, and eerie traditions that once kept people awake at night, just as you may be drifting off into dreams. But don't worry. Here, fear is soft, gentle, brushed with curiosity rather than dread. Like a candle flickering in a quiet room, inviting you to stay safe, warm, and intrigued. And before we venture further, if you find these calm journeys comforting, why not give this video a gentle like, or subscribe if you haven't already? It helps more than you know, and keeps our little community of sleepy historians growing. Now, close your eyes, if they aren't already heavy. Imagine yourself standing on a cobblestone street, thousands of years ago. The night air smells of damp stone, smoke from clay lamps, and the faint bitterness of olives being pressed. The world is dark, truly dark, nothing like our electricity-filled nights. Shadows move differently here. Every creak of wood, every whisper of wind against the tiled rooftops, stretches long into the imagination. In history, fear was alive. It wasn't just stories to pass time, it was a guide, a warning, a way to survive. People feared strange noises in the forest that might be spirits, neighbors whose eyes lingered too much, diseases they couldn't see, believing curses were to blame. Fear shaped so much of what humans built, believed, and avoided. And tonight, we walk through these forgotten tales together. From the alleyways of ancient Rome to medieval legends in cold castles, from sailors who whispered about monsters at sea to villagers who placed charms beneath pillows just to sleep soundly. So breathe slowly. Settle in. And let's wander. Whispers in ancient Rome, shadows of the Subura. You find yourself in Rome. Not the gleaming marble center shown in history books, but the Subura, Rome's sprawling, crowded inner district. It is late evening. The air smells of smoke, roasting chickpeas, and something sour drifting from the taverns. Clay oil lamps glimmer along doorways, but shadows stretch endlessly between them. This was the quarter of the working poor, the laborers, the hustlers, the ex-slaves. Life thrived here, but so too did fear. To live in the Subura was to know the creak of wooden beams above your bed, worrying the whole building might collapse, the whispers that witches brewed strange potions in back rooms, and the shiver of footsteps trailing you when you turned down the wrong alley. Imagine walking here yourself. Your sandals scrape softly against uneven stones. To your left, a curtain twitches. The face of a neighbor peeks out, scowling, superstitious of strangers, nervous of thieves, nervous of you. Ahead, you pass a small shrine tucked between walls, lit by candles. It glows faintly, and you see offerings of bread, coins, tiny carved figurines. These are Lauras, guardian spirits of the household. Romans believed they needed such spirits to protect them, or else malevolent forces might slip in through the cracks. Because Rome was not only an empire of power, it was a city of ghosts. Romans whispered about the lemurs, the restless dead who refused to pass quietly. On certain nights, especially the festival of Lemuria in May, households performed rituals to keep these spirits at bay. Imagine it, a stern paterfamilias rising at midnight, barefoot, tossing black beans behind him one by one, chanting words like a spell. The beans, he believed, would draw the hungry ghost to feed, and once satisfied, they would leave his family in peace. You can almost hear it, the beans bouncing softly against stone, the muttered Latin, the quiet tension of not knowing whether the ritual truly worked. And then there were the alleyways where witches were said to gather. The poet Horace wrote nervous verses about spells made from bones and blood, about jars of strange herbs that could summon shadows from beyond. Even educated Romans admitted they feared love curses, bindings, and dark charms slipped into their food. Imagine sitting at a tavern, sipping watered vinegar wine, and someone joking that the bitter edge means you've been hexed. You'd laugh nervously, but inside you'd wonder. As you walk through this imagined Rome, the atmosphere is alive with subtle menace. The clatter of distant hooves echoes. Dogs bark. A door creaks open, then slams shut again. And soon, the street falls very quiet. In the dark, you feel how real fear was here. Rome had its emperors, its legions, its roaring crowds at the circus. But in the quiet hours, common people feared curses, spirits, fire, collapse, and the unknowable. Pause a moment. Imagine if you had lived here. Would you have believed in lemurs, in restless spirits calling out for beans? Or would you have walked with steady confidence, ignoring shrines and whispers alike? Tell me in the comments, I'm curious. Do you think you would have survived a night in Rome's shadowy Subura? Haunting traditions of the Vikings, the Draugr's breath. The wind picks up. You feel it on your face, colder now, sharper. The scents of Rome, wine, smoke, olive oil, fade away. In their place comes the sting of salt air, mingled with tar, pine resin, and the faint iron tang of worn weapons. You are on a coastline far to the north. The sea is restless. Waves roll and shatter against jagged rock. In the distance, figures gather near the dark wood of a longhouse. Torches flicker. Shadows stretch long, dancing with primal life. The land of the Norse. The Vikings are remembered as warriors, explorers, raiders. Yet under their legends of strength rests a profound fear of what might linger after death. For the Norse knew of the Draugr, restless corpses that refused to stay buried. The Draugr was more than a ghost. It had a body, swollen grotesquely like a corpse steeped in seawater, skin tinged blue or black, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. People believed a Draugr could crush men with inhuman strength, ride the roofs of houses to terrify the living, even slip into dreams. Its breath, cold and foul, was enough to weaken a soul. Imagine sitting in the longhouse at night. The fire burns low, crackling faintly. Outside, snow whispers across the roof. Old voices tell stories, of graves that opened, of warriors rising again, of shadows seen walking beyond the burial mound. Children glance at the doorway. Even grown men steal glances at the thick iron nails driven into beams as charms against the undead. The Norse took great care in their burials. Weapons were buried with warriors. Treasures were placed in ships. And protections too, stakes through the corpse, boulders laid atop graves, or iron shears and sickles at the bier. But still, the fear lingered. What if the dead returned? You walk toward a damp mound at the edge of the forest. Grass grows thick over it, but the earth feels unsettled beneath your feet. The air smells of wet soil and salt. And just then, someone beside you whispers, "Listen." Was that the earth shifting? Or your imagination? Imagine lying awake in a Viking village, wind howling, wolves howling back, and wondering, does something dead walk tonight? Even the bravest warriors, the ones who sailed into storms, whispered of such nights. For if the Draugr came, even swords might not save you. Pause a moment. Would you sleep peacefully here, with the sound of waves pounding the fjord, or would you, too, lie awake, listening, waiting? If you're enjoying this series of journeys, don't forget to gently tap that like button. It truly helps share these stories further across our sleepy little campfire of history. Medieval night terrors, when darkness belonged to demons. The Viking coast fades. The air grows heavier, damp with stone. Bells toll faintly in the distance. And you find yourself in the winding streets of a medieval European town. Timber beams, plaster walls, and crooked rooftops close in above. The alleys are tight, barely space enough for one cart. Lanterns sputter here and there, but the majority of the night belongs to shadows. It is the 13th century, perhaps. The church dominates life, promising salvation, but warning of devils, demons, and damnation with equal weight. People live with the sacred always close at hand. A chapel bell marks hours. A crucifix hangs by every door. And yet, the night brings terror. For without gas lamps or electricity, night was thick. Truly black, save for firelight. You close your eyes for a moment, and imagine the sound, nothing but your own breathing, the scratch of rats in the thatch above, the sudden rattle of shutters when the night wind pushes. Medieval people feared the night not as empty, but as inhabited. Witches gathered, devils prowled, and nightmares pressed hard on sleepers' chests. There was a word for this fear, the mare. You've heard it, perhaps, the root of nightmare. A mare was not a dream itself, but believed to be a creature, an evil spirit that would climb atop sleepers and weigh upon them. You wake, heart racing, unable to move, breath strangled. Sleep paralysis, we call it now. But then, it was proof of nightly visitations. Some would hang charms of herbs above their beds. Others carved prayers into wooden headboards. Mothers traced crosses over children's brows before sleep, whispering protections. Imagine yourself lying in a straw mattress, wooden shutters drawn shut, clutching a small carved cross in your hand and hoping, you would pass the night untouched. Meanwhile, outside the town, further terrors lurked. Medieval Europeans believed forests were the hunting grounds of demons, of wild men, and wolves possessed. The howl of an animal beyond the walls carried far, echoing until it mingled with the imagination. Was it simply a wolf, or the devil's own companion? Smells of smoke and wax fill your senses. Somewhere, a church bell rings midnight. They call it the witching hour, when the veil between worlds grows thin. A rooster crows faintly, out of place at this time. To a medieval ear, that was sinister. You lie in bed. The floor creaks. Someone outside coughs. And stillness returns. Pause a moment. Would you, in that world, tuck yourself deeper under your blanket? Or step outside with a candle to prove no monsters truly lurked in the dark corners of your own home? Tell me in the comments. I love hearing where you plant yourself in history's darker corners. Ghost ships and sea monsters, shadows on the waves. The air shifts once more. You smell salt, tar, and damp rope. The creaking of wood groans beneath your feet. The sea stretches endless in every direction, the horizon dark and heaving, and you realize you're no longer on land. You stand aboard a vessel of the age of exploration. Imagine it, the 16th or 17th century. The world is opening wider by the day. Sailors, merchants, and explorers push further into oceans that seem bottomless, seeking lands they only half believe exist. But for every treasure and discovery, there is fear. Because in this world, a ship is a fragile cradle of wood against an unimaginable expanse. The ocean at night is its own kind of haunted place. Without city lights, the stars blaze, so many, they feel almost overwhelming. The sea reflects them faintly, shimmering and alive. And with that magnificence comes dread. For sailors whispered of things lurking just out of sight. The Flying Dutchman, a ghostly vessel, its sails tattered, cursed to roam the seas forever. To spot it was said to mean misfortune, even death. You lean against the railing, staring into the mist. A creak. A groan. A glowing lantern flickers just beyond sight. Is it another ship, or the Dutchman's eternal shadow, slipping along the waves? Closer to shore, sailors feared sea monsters, serpents big enough to coil around entire ships, or the mighty kraken, with arms longer than any mast, lurking in the depths. These tales were more than stories. They were explanations for the unknown. A fog bank moving oddly. A whale surfacing suddenly. A ship gone missing. Now imagine being aboard such a ship. Wooden decks slick with salt. The smell of dried fish hanging in nets. The constant rush of the waves slamming against the hull. Every creak of the mast feels alive, as if the ship itself gasps like some breathing beast. The lookout cries out, something in the water. You strain your eyes. Shapes coil under moonlight. The sea ripples. Men mutter prayers, clutching talismans, crossing themselves again and again. And then, just a wail. Relief floods the deck, but unease stays. The ocean is endless. Who knows what else moves beneath? Sailors were deeply superstitious. They nailed charms to the mast. Tattooed figures believed to ward off evil. Even simple whistling could be forbidden. It was said to call up winds that might not stop. And then the storms. Imagine the black sky, thunder cracking, rain lashing so hard it blinds. The ship tips and roars. Lanterns fall and shatter. Men cling to ropes with bleeding hands, praying the timbers hold. In the sheer chaos, was that a wave, or the rolling back of some colossal creature just beneath? The sea, in history, was never just sea. It was alive, mysterious, and profoundly feared. Pause. Imagine yourself out there, weeks from shore, the stars vast above, the waters infinite below. Could you sleep with the hull groaning, knowing at any moment storm, or silence, or something stranger could claim you? Whispers of the Black Death, shadows of the plague. Now the rolling sea fades. The creak of wood softens into silence. The salty air turns pungent, heavier, foul. You are walking cobbled streets again. But these are not bustling alleys. They are eerily silent. Shutters closed. Doors bolted. The year is 1348. The Black Death is here. Imagine the smell first, the stench of illness whispered through entire towns. Bodies piled too quickly to bury. Air thick with smoke from fires set to purify it. Herbs burned in bunches, vinegar splashed across walls. Doctors carried posies of flowers, believing sweet scents could drive disease away. But still, the sickness spread. Buboes swelling under arms, fevers burning uncontrollably. To see a neighbor collapse meant terror could be at your door tomorrow. People turned to superstition. Children sang rhymes. Little warnings made eerie in memory. Amulets of saintly relics were tied to sickbeds. Priests walked in processions, chanting for mercy, but many feared the prayers were too late. Some believed it was God's wrath. Others said the devil roamed openly. Later whispers spoke of witches or outsiders poisoning wells. Imagine yourself inside a medieval home, shutters barred, candles guttering against the dark. You clutch a pouch of herbs to your nose. Outside, the cart rattles by, wheels heavy, the muffled call, bring out your dead. And yet, even in fear, there was humanity. People left bread secretly for neighbors. Nuns and monks cared for the sick even as they too fell. Communities whispered prayers together through walls. Fear was heavy, yes, but also binding, a reminder of our need for one another. You sit quietly now, imagining the silence of those streets. Only the tolling of bells. Only the wails. Only the echo of your own heartbeat, wondering if dawn would bring comfort, or the same fate. Pause a moment. Do you think you would have hidden away, avoiding all contact? Or would you, bravely or recklessly, still have tried to care for neighbors? Leave a thought in the comments. I love reading how you would have placed yourself in history's great tests. The witch trials, when neighbors became nightmares. The year shifts. The cobblestones beneath your feet remain, but the air feels heavier. Imagine a small village in early modern Europe, say, late 1500s or 1600s. Timbered cottages lean against one another. Smoke curls up from hearths. Chickens cluck in the dirt lane. At first, it looks peaceful. But beneath, there is tension, bubbling like a fire in hidden embers. Because this was the age when fear was not only of spirits in graveyards, but of the person who lived next door. Accusations of witchcraft spread like sparks. Some were whispered grudges. Her cow produced no milk after she passed my barn. Others were tragedies twisted into blame. My child sickened, surely she cursed him. In this age, when disease and disaster had few explanations, it was easy to point toward someone else. Imagine being that someone. A woman who lived alone. An unmarried herbalist. Or simply the widow next door who looked oddly at your garden. You find yourself in a courtroom, dim with torchlight. Wooden benches creak as neighbors crowd in, muttering. A magistrate leans forward, stern, Bible heavy at his side. The accused stands trembling, wrists bound. She insists her innocence, but already the room has decided. Every strange look, every bit of bad luck, every illness that had touched the village suddenly becomes evidence. And then the tests. The water trial, bound and thrown into a pond. If she floats, guilt is sealed. If she sinks, innocence proven, though too late to breathe again. The cruelty is edged with fear, the fear that if something isn't done, evil walks freely among them. Imagine yourself outside, near the stake, smoke stinging your eyes, prayers ringing out. What do you feel? Relief that safety has returned? Or horror at the injustice? It is easy, centuries later, to wonder how such hysteria took hold. But the truth is, fear feeds fear. One accusation made another easier. Whole communities became engulfed. And the silence, neighbors too afraid to defend, too fearful of becoming the next target, deepened it further. The Salem witch trials in Massachusetts are the most remembered in the English-speaking world. But across Europe, tens of thousands were accused, many executed. Fear of the devil's hand was as real as any soldier's blade. Pause now. If you had lived then, what would you have done? Would you have spoken out, or kept your head down, hoping suspicion never turned your way? Drop your thoughts in the comments, so we can see how different hearts in our little community feel about standing in those fearful shoes. Shadows of the Victorian era, séances, ghost photography, and death rituals. Step forward a few centuries. The cobblestones remain, but gas lamps now glow along them. The streets are foggy, horse-drawn carriages rattling past. Men in top hats. Women in flowing dresses, lace veils. We are in the 19th century, the Victorian era, an age of deep curiosity and deep fear. The Victorians lived with death always close at hand. Life expectancy was low. Diseases like cholera, consumption, and typhoid claimed families suddenly. Even in wealthy households, death arrived often. And so, the Victorians made rituals of mourning. Imagine entering a grand house cloaked in black drapery. Mirrors covered, clocks stopped. Family members dressed head to toe in mourning clothes. A locket rests on the mantel, holding a curl of hair from one recently gone. And yet, mourning mingled with mysticism. This was also the age of spiritualism. Séances swept through drawing rooms. Families huddled round candlelit tables, hands gently clasped, believing mediums could thin the veil and let spirits speak. Knocks. Whispers. Cold drafts. Even moving tables. You sit in one such room, velvet curtains drawn, A medium breathes deeply, eyes rolling back. Gasps fill the air as the table beneath your palms begins to quiver softly. Is it true? Or clever trickery with wires and tapping feet? Your heart races, though gently. You lean closer. If you could hear one voice from beyond, who would it be? There was also the eerie invention of spirit photography. Early cameras, with their long exposures, could create ghostly effects, an accidental blur, a double image. But Victorians longed for it. They sat for portraits hoping to see a faint figure behind them, proof that loved ones lingered even after death. The era was full of contradictions. Science advanced rapidly, medicine, electricity, steam power. And yet superstition held tight. People carried charms, conducted séances, believed photography itself might open new doors to the unseen. You walk a dim London street now, fog curling around the lamplights like pale ghosts. You hear footsteps behind you, and turn, only to see nothing. Then again, they believed ghosts were never far. Pause. Would you have joined a séance, hands linked at a table, waiting for raps and flickering candles? Or would you have rolled your eyes, preferring the comfort of science's explanations? Either way, the Victorians remind us that even in modern times, fear of death and its mysteries is part of being human. Creatures of the night, folklore from every corner. The foggy lamps of Victorian London fade, and once again the world shifts beneath your feet. The sounds of the city hush, replaced by a chorus of night voices, crickets, whispering winds, and drums from far-off lands. For this chapter, you are not in just one place, but drifting between cultures, through the kinds of fears that kept communities awake when the night fell deepest. Across the oceans to the Caribbean and Latin America, villagers whisper of the chupacabra. Picture this. Twilight has fallen, the livestock are penned behind crooked wooden fences, and the stars pierce deep blue skies. Suddenly, a goat is found lifeless at dawn, drained in eerie silence. Is it a wolf? A sickness? Or the dreaded chupacabra? Goat-sucker, with eyes like burning embers, moving swiftly through the dark, vanishing before dawn. Whether myth or frightened misinterpretation, such stories traveled quickly, especially where animals were life itself. Now the air changes again. You are deep in Japan during the Edo period. Lanterns swing softly. Bamboo creaks with wind. And here, whispers tell of the yokai, strange spirits, monsters, tricksters. Imagine walking a lantern-lit road and spotting something odd, shadows moving against the light, shapes bending like water. Perhaps a rokurokubi, a woman whose neck stretches impossibly long as she sleeps. Or a mischievous kappa, lurking beneath river waters, waiting for the careless. Japanese folklore shows us that fear was not always about destruction, but about respect, about remembering that nature and the unseen world had their own rules. Your journey shifts once more. The sands of Arabia stretch wide beneath your feet. A caravan winds slowly under silver moonlight. Here the whispers are of the ghoul. Not just a monster, but a corpse-eater, something that waits at lonely burial mounds to lure the unwary. Some say it wears the guise of a wanderer at first, calling into the night, until it leads you astray where no one can hear. The desert is beautiful, but dangerous. And such tales warn travelers not to stray, not to trust every friendly voice in the dark. You can feel these worlds overlap, the goat pens trembling, the bamboo forest whispering, the desert sands shifting. All different lands, all different tongues. But all carried in common, the sense that the night holds secrets, and that stories help us name them, hold them, and sometimes survive them. Pause here. If you could sit by any one of these fires, Caribbean, Japanese, or Arabian, and listen to their elders speak such tales, which would you choose? Tell me in the comments. I love to imagine which culture's whispers call most strongly to different listeners. Fireside fears, when stories themselves were protection. The air grows still. The desert sands soften into grass. Lanterns fade into glowing embers. You are now seated by a fire, under an open sky, somewhere timeless. This is not one town or one culture, it could be anywhere. For this chapter is not about a specific place, but about the oldest human fear, the dark itself, and how stories were our shield. Imagine yourself thousands of years ago. A small circle of humans, huddled close around firelight. Sparks leap into the night, fading into constellations overhead. Beyond the glow, eyes glitter. Wolves. Big cats. Shadows. And something else, the unknown. Fear was not only real danger, but the imagination's endless companion. To explain the sound in the brush, the hiss of wind in caves, the sudden silence of birds overhead. A story was born. Creatures defined. Monsters named. And once named, they belonged to us. Every culture carried this pattern. Africa with its tales of spirits in the savannah. Indigenous peoples of the Americas with coyote, raven, and trickster beings. The North with ice beasts and trolls. The South with restless ancestors and river shades. Stories created boundaries. Warnings for children not to wander too far, reminders for villages to stay close together, lessons for communities about courage and humility. Now imagine yourself, lying under a blanket by those ancient fires, the wood popping, smoke curling into the stars. A storyteller leans in closer, voice low, eyes shining. Every listener clutches tighter to one another. And yet, in that fear, there is safety. Because terror shared in a circle becomes softer, smaller. The wolf outside may hunt. But the wolf in the story? It has already been defeated, evening after evening, by the telling. Even centuries later, that's what we do. Around campfires, in family tales, in books, in whispers in the dark. We tell the stories not only to scare, but to ease. Because when you can name the fear, you can rest against it. Breathe slowly here. Feel the comfort of the firelight, dancing warm on your face. Fear is part of us. But so too is the telling, the soft hum of voices assuring you. You're not alone. Pause. Which fireside would you choose? Which ancestor or storyteller would you wish to sit beside, hearing the way their voice turned shadows into shapes, and shapes into lessons? Leave your thought in the comments. I always love seeing how you, across time zones and cultures, connect with fear not just as dread, but as comfort. Shadows into dreams, reflections across time. The last fire is dimming now. Embers glow red against the dark, fading, flickering warm. You lean back against the earth, let your body soften, and look up at the stars that gleam exactly as they did for every soul we've met tonight. Rome's haunted alleys. The Draugr of the Norse. The nightmares of medieval Europe. Ships adrift beneath impossible skies. The plague-stricken bells. Neighbors accused of witchcraft. Victorian parlor séances and ghostly photographs. The creatures of the night across every culture's breath. And the first fire circles, our most ancient shield against fear. Each tale different. Each place unique. And yet all connected. Because at their heart, fears remind us of our humanness. They kept us awake, yes, but they also kept us alive. Fear made us invent charms, watch the skies, share stories, and care for one another. As you listen now, you are part of that unbroken thread. For thousands of years, humans have sat just like you, sometimes anxious, sometimes curious, sometimes just needing the comfort of another voice through the darkness. And so here you are, safe, listening, drifting deeper into calm. Close your eyes a little heavier. Notice your own breathing, slow, steady. Inhale like the tide. Exhale like wind through trees. Fear, in history, was survival. But for you now, in this moment, let it soften into curiosity, into story, into rest. If you're enjoying these late-night journeys with me, give this video a gentle like. It really does help more sleepy historians find their way here. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. Tonight is only one thread of the endless tapestry of human lives we can wander together. Now, slowly, imagine yourself walking away from the last ember. The fire warms your back, and ahead is a soft path. Stars above. Quiet forest around. You hear an owl, distant and calming. The earth feels steady beneath your bare feet. Every step is slower. Each breath is deeper. Fear has passed. All that remains is calm. And as you near the end of this path, you realize, you've carried many shadows tonight. But in the carrying, they feel lighter. What once made others tremble can now soothe you, gently, like the weight of a soft blanket. So rest now, sleepy traveler. Let the stories settle where they will. And know, there will always be new ones waiting when you return. Good night. Sleep well. Until our next journey together.